Hey everyone, Sasha and Michael here with exciting news. The podcast is now sponsored.
Yay!
We've been holding out, waiting to find a partnership that would really feel meaningful to us. You know, how protective we are of everything we're doing and wanting it to sort of live up to a certain standard. And of course, relationships have everything to do with that. But the podcast is now being sponsored by my favorite photo lab in the city, which is amazing. It's called Picture House and the Small Darkroom.
Such a great name.
It is. It's long, but great. Picture House and the Small Darkroom is a darkroom and post-production studio that's been servicing the photo community in New York City since 1996, so they know what they're doing. If you've got a question about your film, their amazing staff's ready to help with film processing, high-res scanning, darkroom printing, and digital post. And they've also just opened a photo book store and have been hosting artist talks and book signings. Yay. We are
That's
all
exciting.
about that. Yeah. Love that. So these guys are home to pros, amateurs, beginners, and everyone in between. So for our audience out there, this is the place for you. And we're so excited. And we love their values. The people who work there have been working there for many, many, many years. It's like a big family. But don't let that fool you. It's a pretty elaborate place, multi-floors, space in Chelsea. Really incredible facility.
Yeah, so I've known about them for quite a few years through friends of mine who, some of them are quite well known. Others are not so quite well known. So they really are open to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, Claudia and Richard, who are two of the owners, are just really lovely people. So they do have very high-end, fancy clients, but they love working with... They love working with beginners and helping people out and helping people find their voice through the kind of post and printing services that they do. So it's really there to collaborate with you. And they just worked with one of my artists, I won't say who, but they're doing really amazing work, and they're great people with incredible facilities.
And on that note, if you call them and mention PhotoWork, you can get 20% off of film services and 10% off of print services.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You can reach them at 212-243-0170, or you can visit phtsdr.com. That's PHTSDR for Picture House and the Small Darkroom.com.
So Picture House and the Small Darkroom, welcome to the PhotoWork family. All right, let's do this. Peanut, if you're staying in the room, no talking. Hello and welcome to the PhotoWork podcast, the talky and touchy-feely version of my book, PhotoWork, 40 Photographers on Process and Practice. Hello everyone, I'm Sasha Wolf, recording from the giant aluminum can in Woodstock, New York, and joined as usual by my good friend and producer, Mr. Michael Chauvin-Dalton. Hello, Michael.
Hello there.
How are you?
I'm doing all right. How about you?
Yeah, all good. Spring has arrived and the snow is melting, and it's nice to be able to get out more. In fact, I've been risking life and limb over the past 5 months that I've been living in the Airstream, because I'm sort of in a tree grove, and the winds up here have gotten more intense. You know, I've mentioned I'm up on the top of a mountain, but the winds have definitely gotten more intense, as they have all over the country or world. Mm-hmm. And so when the gusts get above 30, 35 miles an hour, I usually sleep in the house. And sometimes I'm out here and I don't really realize they're going to get really bad. And then it's really scary because I can see out the window. I have these 60-foot pines. Some of them are actually more than 60 feet. And I can see them. It's like they're just absolutely waving in the wind. And so that makes for a tough night's sleep, just out of anxiety. So anyway, yesterday, finally had these tree specialists come by and identify the trees that are most likely to kill me. And there are 3 that are in danger of coming down because they are, for one reason or another, vulnerable, a woodpecker, or one of them is actually split into two. And it's actually split at about 10 feet high, but then you've got another like 60 feet of these two different sort of offshoots. Anyway, if a tree is split like that, even if the base looks really solid, they're just vulnerable. So anyway, they're all coming down. The guys are going to come with all the... It's going to be really fun to watch because they are so big. And these are the kind of trees you don't just cut down. You have to actually go up with a...
Climb and
big
take down...
cherry picker. And yeah, exactly. So my grove will thin out a little bit, but I'm much less likely to be crushed to death, which is sort of an irony I'm not that into. Like she had this dream. She had this dream to live in an Airstream and then was crushed to death. So that doesn't seem like fun. So yeah, taking care of that. Yeah, can have a more restful, because the winds also get really crazy during the summer and some of the summer storms and stuff. So.
It definitely has changed.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get 60-mile-an-hour gusts out of nowhere now, and it just comes and goes. Yep.
Sometimes I watch the storms up here, and when I'm in the big house, there are so many of these really, really tall pines, and I can't even believe they don't come down because it is amazing just what the natural world is capable of. And these things are really... They're like 7-8-story buildings. They're really skinny.
Right.
They only have pine, action. Action at sort of the top, like 10 feet. And it's amazing. They can sway like 8-10 feet over in either direction, and you think they're going to just all come down, but they don't. It's only the ones that are really have some damage to them, but it is an incredible sight. So safety first, and then you can sit back and admire nature. But okay, so that's our
our nature talk
our
for today.
Outdoor nature talk, right?
Well, it is really beautiful where you are, and it is. There's a little.
Want to be safe.
Yeah, give and take. You got to take care of the surrounding area. Yep.
Yeah. Actually, I had this other guy. I swear to God, this guy is a PhD in trees, whatever that is exactly. And he came first a couple of weeks ago, and he said that he used to urge people to never cut down trees, that they were always overreacting and to let these old growth trees do their thing. And now he's just totally changed his tune because of the changing weather patterns.
That's interesting.
So,
yeah.
Okay, so I said we were going to stop, and then I continued.
We kept going.
So, as we said in the top, in the promo, we have a new sponsor, Picture House and the Small Darkroom, and it's just really exciting. I'm so happy to work with these guys. So that's just a great piece of news for us. Yeah. And hopefully for them.
Yep. Check them out. Yes.
And check them out. And even if you don't use their services, and if you're in the city, go over and they're building. I mean, it already exists, but they're continuing to build out this really wonderful, idiosyncratic bookstore.
Yeah.
It's just very special.
And they'll have events soon, and so definitely get on their list.
Events.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have an event there, actually. We'll probably have our fundraiser there.
Oh, wow.
And maybe some other stuff. Yeah, working on that plan. But yeah, and also we're working on a Zoom for the community so we can all see each other. That's going to be in May with a special guest. I think that's going to be really fun. So let us know if that's something you'd like to be a part of. There might be a small fee, but it'll be very small just to sort of cover our costs. I think that'll be really fun because we know our audience. We just get so much mail from you guys, but we don't get to see you. And so we thought, now that the foundation is really up and running and everything is moving along, we're working on writing out the applications for the mentorship program, which will launch at the end of the summer. But we thought maybe it would be nice to start seeing faces and coming together as the PhotoWork community. So excited about that.
Yeah, I think that will be a lot of fun.
And you and Tower and I will be on that Zoom. So more to come on that. Anyway, how did you like today's guest is the photographer who's having a lot of success right now, Tommy Ka. What did you think?
Yeah, Tommy Ka has some really interesting thoughts about photography and what photography is to him, especially in terms of the idea of it as a language and as a way of getting to know people. which, having kind of grown up in the more traditional modernist world of photography, hearing things from, like Gary Winogrand saying you can't really know people, it's just light on surface. It's so fascinating to hear someone talk about photography as a way of getting to know people.
Yeah, I thought that was very cool too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tommy, I think he had a lot of coffee the morning we were recording.
He says he said he was a fast talker, and you said that's okay, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, well, he lived up to that. But he has a lot in there. Is a lot of really interesting content.
Yeah, and he talks about Memphis as this kind of place of fiction and shifting memories, and I think that's really true. People have. If you know Memphis, you know what it is. But if you don't, you have this kind of romantic idea of it. Yeah,
no, definitely. Well, Tommy sort of deconstructed that and personalized it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a really lovely guy. I'm fond of him and was real appreciative that, he's so busy right now. So he really made time for us and we
Absolutely.
Were grateful. So thank you, Tommy.
Yes.
And, well, why don't we get to it? Because we spent a lot of time talking about trees, and this is a show about photography, I think.
I don't know. I'm thinking about an arborist podcast now.
Yeah. By the way, I did get a nice piece of fan mail the other day where the person said, "More of you and Michael."
Oh, that's so nice.
There you go. This is for you.
Yeah, that's right. Now we'll look at the next one. Will be enough of you and Michael.
Man, it's hard to win. I know. We can already predict that. You don't even have to send those emails. We know. We get it. We can predict.
That's right.
Or it might be you and Michael fine, tree talk bad. Oh, boy. Yes. All right. Well, just being our authentic selves. And on that note, Michael, if you don't mind, please take it away.
My pleasure. And here's your conversation with Tommy Ka.
Tommy Ka, welcome to the PhotoWork podcast. It's awesome to have you on. Thank you so much for spending time today and making the time to do this.
Oh my gosh, Sasha, thank you so much for having me. Yay, hello. Thank you, everyone,
for
listening to my voice. I'm going to try to practice my NPR radio voice.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, it's just, I think it's only smooth talking like this a little bit. I tried that this morning and I just immediately laughed. I couldn't hold it together. So
also, by the way, we don't want people to fall asleep, so don't. I think two of our fastest talkers that we've had and sort of the most high energy have been incredibly popular episodes. So people, we like the high energy, the Todd Hido high energy. So. All right. Well, so much to talk about because you're it, man. You're killing it right now. Lots going on and really exciting stuff. And we will get to all of that. But let's start how we always do. If you can tell us just your bio, where you come from and how you got to where you are today, what your journey was, that would be great.
Oh, man. I should have practiced on the Cliff Notes version of my origin stories, but
we like the details. It's okay.
You like the details? Yeah. I grew up in Whitehaven, where Graceland is, Elvis's home, was 5 minutes away from me growing up. I went to Memphis College of Art for undergrad, and then I attended and graduated from Yale University's MFA program in photography. And I moved to New York after briefly spending a semester here in 2010 and 2013. I moved after school and been trying to make things work and figure things out as I go. Not the best advice I'd give to people aspiring to make it as an artist, but there's a lot of, I guess, isolated childhood experiences for me because there wasn't a lot of other Asian people outside of my family. I've just never seen anyone else apart from my family for a really long time. So that's something I didn't really had such a conscious awareness of. I was a child. So things I've kind of think about now, I have the words to describe them much later on, and how much of that has started to play into my picture making. But I'm digressing. And yeah, and mostly that is my origin story. I've done photography for a while, and I started to make pictures. I started out making pictures of my friends, my immediate circle of communities, and that was the crux of my early work. Was I was interested in using the camera to meet people, to understand people that I just come across and find them interesting in some way. Like there's some kind of just people watching or randomly walking down the street. There's something about somebody that strikes me that makes me want to know them better through the camera. And so that's how I started. And when I was here in 2010, that was a really big change in my work, because that's when I started to do self-portrait work and turning the camera to myself, because I didn't have that community anymore for that time, because I didn't know anybody. And so it made sense to make pictures of myself, and I didn't think I was interesting. I still don't think I'm interesting enough, and I think that's like kind of what's been playing out lately where I'm at now.
What do you mean when you say you don't think you're interesting enough? You don't think you're an interesting enough subject, or what does that mean?
Early on, I just was, it was 2010, so conversations about identity. I was really familiar with the work of Nikki S. Lee, and, I was familiar with Cindy Sherman's Untitled Stills. That doesn't sound right, but anyway. And I just didn't think I was interesting for the camera, or that I didn't make a really great subject matter. I didn't want to immediately talk about, just because I was in front of the camera. And I think this is because of the environment of my undergrad, that there was this assumption that if you make a self-portrait of yourself, it was synonymous to your identity and thus tied to your race, that it was really synonymous to your own ethnic identity. And I wasn't really interested in making that work because I wasn't sure myself. There was not a lot of references. I think there's only one catalog of a survey of contemporary Chinese photography that I asked my librarian, thank you, MCA, to buy it for me, so I'll be able to read what is going on in the other side of the world, which I had no connection with. There was no language to go on. The idea of making work in Memphis is, I don't know, it felt like I was overshadowed by the strong photographs of Eggleston's work and Sally Mann, Alex Soph, Christian Berry, people who've came through the South and made work. At the time, there are tons of people, and I just felt like I wasn't allowed to make that kind of work. And then when I turned the camera to myself, it was also like, I don't know what I'm trying to say, because I had no idea what my background was to me. I didn't value myself that much. And I think that's why it kind of became inadvertently these character studies of being stoic, being deadpan, being the really looking at what my role is, both a photographer, an actor, a performer. And those are the things that I really that has stuck with me over the years. While I was always questioning my levels of Asianness, my Chineseness, my Vietnameseness, and Americanness, and my Westernness, and even being a photographer at all. But it really felt like being a photographer was the consistent identity that no one really questioned me. People I've now realized I've grown up have always kind of made me feel out of place in really micro-coded ways. Sorry, that was such a long answer.
No,
that question.
I'd like you to keep talking. I think you're really talking about something fascinating, and I love this idea that you felt that people questioned who you were and what your identity was, and but they allowed you somehow to be a photographer. I mean, that's really interesting. And I could see that would make you really, really want to be a photographer, particularly, when you're a young man, and that must have felt like a real respite or a real coup in a way to have, found this thing. Anyone who's taken pictures seriously that has walked around with a camera knows that feeling of armor, protection, power, etc., that the camera can afford you. And also, of course, give you an opportunity to sort of be involved, but yet stay on the sidelines, right? Like, you don't have to be laughing and smoking weed and hanging out with all the cool kids doing everything they do, but you can sort of be part of the group if you have your camera with you. It sort of makes you interesting, and it gives you something to do. I mean, now I'm talking a lot, but
no, you're not.
I mean, I love what you were getting to, and I hadn't heard you or read. I was obviously doing a lot of research on you, and I haven't heard you say that before, and so that's really fascinating to me and relatable. So, I mean, you are in this sort of complex situation. As you said, you're Chinese and Vietnamese. Your family came to the United States from Vietnam in the 1980s. You didn't have a lot of artistic influences in your family, although you later found out your mother had also made photographs without a lot of ambition, but she clearly enjoyed using a camera as well. So how do you wind up even getting involved in photography? I'm always really interested in who someone's initial mentor is, because I think it's so important.
Oh man, that is such a cutback to a previous lifetime. I even feel like that was 2 lifetimes ago. To even think about the first picture, I would say it's a combination of things. I think I did it to impress somebody. Of course, a guy, of course, and I'm like, I don't need a man, but yeah, I don't. I'm trying to convince myself right now as I say this. I don't need a man. But I was, I was young and I was really impressionable, but I also was trying to prove something then. I don't know. I was like, I got the same camera as this other person. And I think it was really, I went along when I was realizing I was queer, I was gay. And I liked that it kind of coincided together when I was really, when I started to pick up a camera at all. It coincided with discovering my sexuality, but also, really terrible choices of trying to impress somebody at all. It's like, just be yourself. It's like, but you can't do that when you're an awkward, 11, 12, 13-year-old. But I remember having a disposable camera on a trip to New Orleans, and I had such I think it was a middle school trip, and I don't remember the other pictures, but I'm sure it was of my friends or something dumb like a pitch black flash picture of the sky, which is just a black picture, just nothing there on a glossy Walgreens print that I got so cheaply. So, but the one thing I remembered was this Rock City marquee, maybe Rock City Theater, something like that. And it was just a marquee, a theater marquee at a venue. And I was so proud of that picture. I don't know where those pictures are. I really hope I run across it one day, someday. But it was just the first picture I made. It was a flash picture. It was from a Kodak disposable camera, the one that you take on trips. And I don't know, I had a lot of fun, but I didn't really think about photography until I was in high school. I did some journalism classes. I was exploring acting and theater, filmmaking. I was doing these workshops outside of school, and so photography was this back burner. I could take a class for a year, and then I did an independent study that just gave me when I really, really started to think about being a photographer. I mentioned this morning, if I can say this, is like the first photograph I saw in a museum. I always love this. I think this is what made me felt being a photographer. What I'm doing now was made possible by seeing the Sandy Scoggin Revenge of the Goldfish at the Brooks Museum. I think sometime when I was in early high school, maybe ninth grade, I don't know, what is time? But I saw that picture, the blues and the oranges, the sculptural, the in camera, the building, the construct of that picture. It was large too. I'd never seen anything like it before, and I was like, I think I want to be this kind of photographer. Fast forward years later, my friend Jordan Castile recommended me for a position at New York campus, for the Rutgers New York campus in New Jersey, and I got a teaching post there. I taught my first photography classes, intro for photography, and incidentally, I ended up teaching with Sandy Scoggin. I got to meet her. I got to talk to her. I still am in touch with her. She always sends me these like early morning. I don't know anyone else that's up in the morning at 6 a.m.
I am.
And
can always call me.
Please. Oh, I love that. Please. I like taking pictures of the sunrise because I am a cliche sometimes. I just like to make fun pictures for myself. And, no one's going to see it. Maybe if I posted to Instagram, probably. But Sandy would just send me DMs and emojis and just thinking of me. And it's like, and she looks at my stuff and she's so sweet and amazing and so inspirational just to talk to. It's like, I'm just still making work. I'm still here. I'm still making work, she says, and it's just like, yeah, that's awesome. And I'm so glad that those things correlated. And then to just top it all off is just this really mad year for me in the last year. I'm jumping ahead so much. But to end this story, the short story, I ended up doing a special installation for the Tennessee Triennial. This is their inaugural year. So venues across Tennessee are displaying artists as a sort of survey, but to really make visible artists that have been there and been making work. So I was invited to install a piece at the Brooks Museum, and that is up until October. It's up there for a really long time, and I'm just thinking like, oh wow, I can't believe I saw a Sandy Scoggin picture, and this is what inspired me to really do it. And then I'm in the same space, it's the same exact area I saw the picture. It's in the rotunda, my installation is there, and it's such a full circle.
It's very moving. It's fantastic. That's a wonderful story. So you eventually wound up at Yale, as you said, and how was that experience for you?
Oh man, I appreciate so much I didn't understand what was happening to me. It's like I did a brownout for 2 years is what I described it. Yeah. But I didn't have an intensive experience as my colleagues, because grad school is it's very an intense environment already, to really look at what we're doing, at our work, at our process, to try things out, but also to really, really focus and develop ourselves as the best versions as we can. And I got lost. I think I wish I was a little more confident then than I am now. I think I started to question a lot of what I been doing in my own picture making at the time. But I was making a lot of different kinds of pictures and really bad pictures. I hope people one day refer to that period as my art suck period. It was just really bad. But I've done a lot of pictures I am proud of that has led me to these directions I am doing now. But yeah, I really learned to appreciate my time there after being away for so long. My hands stopped clamming up every time I think about that space. But I had a really great time. My experience of Ellen Doherty is my art historian from undergrad, and she was like responsible for teaching like photography, history of photography, and all the knowledge I have about it is from her. And it was just crazy for me to put up work 12 times in front of people I studied.
Right. No, that's intimidating for sure.
It was I think, American Idol was very popular then, I think, or just starting. And I definitely interviewed with someone that auditioned on American Idol and told us about it. But it was a very American Idol style panel or way of setting us, the students up. We're presenting work, we're putting up work. And I was just like, I feel so embarrassed that I made terrible pictures. Just like, oh, I'm so sorry, Lorna Simpson, that you have to look at this really bad photograph. That I hope that we could still be friends.
Well, you found your way. I mean, and, you've really developed quite a large amount of work that I think you consider at the very least adequate because it's on your website and it's out in the world. And so you're pretty prolific, and it seems like you're really at this point filled with, if not confidence, at least, I don't know, enough confidence to keep you, really in a zone where your curiosity about how something will look as a photograph, you're able to feed that and put out such a tremendous amount of work. And if I understand correctly, although you do have different bodies of work, many of them are sort of considered one overarching body. And I really want to talk about Baxter Street and about the book, because this is, getting a lot of attention right now and a really tremendous accomplishment. So a lot of those bodies of work are combined into your new book, which was the end result of your winning the Next Step Award, which is something that Aperture and Baxter Street, Camera Club of New York, and 7G Foundation, this is something they've put together called the Next Step Award. And you won in 2021. And one of the things, you get a grant, money, but you also get to publish with Aperture, and then have this exhibition at Baxter Street, which I just saw. So tell us about the book and about what this whole whirlwind experience has been like.
Oh, man. I think I've been trying to preach this with my students, or at least taking a page out of Legacy Russell, of thanking people who helped me get to where I am at through my friends, my communities, my sitters, subject matters, the curators, editors. The support is just amazing, and I would love to recognize that as much as I can, because I think just to briefly show, to express our gratitude for people who help us get here, I think is definitely the kind of artist I want to be.
Yeah.
And trying to point that out to when I teach and when trying to impart that lesson to students now that we get to decide who to be. So I'd love to thank them, everybody. The list is so numerous. I'm so sorry that I'm blanking on specific names
but you had great. I mean, you had Jill Weinstock, obviously, at Baxter, and Sarah Meister, and Leslie Martin was the editor of the book, and Samantha Marlowe, I know. And I was so lucky to have Leslie Martin's perspective. I think she was the first person to actually take us, to really look at the various bodies of work. But I just saw Zora J. Murph last night at the ICP Infinity Awards. He won the Infinity Award. I love you, Zora. But he and I go way back, and he won the first Next Step Award. Right,
and
I know. Yeah.
I would say he's responsible for a lot of the setup of how, I don't know, Zora deserves a lot of so much recognition for is helping me get here, even though he has no say on the whole how I got here. It was just surprising for me. Now I'm going to talk about the award. I was surprised that people were even thinking about me, or that I was on folks' radars. I operate in a way where I do exhibitions, and I really started to seriously do it with more intended efforts of more consideration in how I was presenting my work in 2019. I think beforehand I was just phoning it in and just was happy to be there. And then I realized it is a privilege to just be able to see what my work looks like, because people are actually wanting to see this. But, I wasn't really worried about drawing a crowd. I was just wanting to do a good job. And that fueled a lot of how I approached each show after the other to do it better than the last, and it was a lot of awkwardness. So the trust of just fast forwarding to now in the last year to put the book together, to put the show together, it's this trying to honor all the work that I've done that has actually did register with people in a lot more ways than I didn't think to. So it's just I'm so flattered and really humbled, and I don't know how else to describe this amazing opportunity. I just want to do a good job.
Yeah.
And the book with Leslie, it was great. It was just amazing. She was the first person to just look at everything I had.
And was it Leslie's idea to combine different bodies of work, or were you already sort of in that headspace?
I was kind of already in that headspace. I met some interesting photographers in my travels and doing stuff. And Hubert, I am butchering his last name, I'm so sorry. Crabieres. He's a French photographer, and he is the first person to describe like everything I do is one long ongoing body of work. So I was like, yeah, I think that's true for anything. It reminded me a lot of Gregory Crutzen talking about we're essentially asking the same question, just differently for each time he does a new project. And so I think the same. Like I can compartmentalize and treat my pictures in these short films that make up an anthology film. But yeah, I think it just makes sense that it is one ongoing. So Leslie intertwining it was like actually quite set up to do that, but I was really happy to see what just whatever people were looking at. Studio Lin came in to do the design, and I just am a big fan of their books, their past books, like Farah Al-Qasimi's book, Chef's Kiss. I'm such a lucky dude. And Leslie intertwining and interweaving my mom's work and these three bodies of work of the southern landscapes and these cutouts of myself, me and my mom's collaboration together over the years, just felt right. And that this is coming from the same space somehow, and trying to really say what I thought my work was about, representation and identity. It's like, I think, yes, of course, I think those are really easy to say, but now it's about really finding the echoes of ourselves, finding how much the past still reverberates in our present. When Leslie was sequencing, it was just like, wow, no one really considered to do this before, because it was either too much work or they wanted to really just focus on one thing at a time, like a series that these pictures look similar, so they have to go together,
Right, yeah. Well, I don't think any book editing project, any scope would be too daunting for Leslie, because she's a master. So much respect for her. Mm-hmm. You said you were talking to, I don't know if you were talking to, but I grabbed this from the New York Times piece on you by Michael Adno. You said language is a communal activity, and communal activity is the reason we have slang, dialect, why we have accents. I'm making pictures so I can find other people that speak in the same way as me. Can you explain that to me? I'm really interested in that idea, and I just was, when I read that, I wanted to know more what you were thinking.
I have so many theories about photography, so thank you for asking. I don't think this is anything clever or anything new.
I don't require new, by the way, just interested in your thoughts.
I equate photography. This is an old way of thinking, so I think I butchered that quote when I was talking to Michael for that article. But I always had the idea that photography by now is so ubiquitous. It's so in every day in our lives, like through billboards, to our smartphones, to us being inundated by them in some form or fashion. And I think people are able to speak in photography a lot more. And not to say it's a universal language, but I think it is a very interesting way to look at photography as in a linguistic point of view. I also think of photography as like between not just mirrors and windows, but about being haunted and an exorcism. It's like photography's ghost hunting, which really goes against what I wrote for Aperture, Photo No-Nos. But I'm going on a tangent. So we're sticking to the point of, I felt that photography, thinking about it, both photography and language are communal activities. And that's the reason why we have these slang and dialects of the same language. And I am trying to use photography to do the same thing, with not just trying to build on self-portrait work. I don't know. I'm just trying to have fun with what is possible, but really viewing things and how if I speak in a certain way, I can cast a net to find others that are speaking in a similar way. Maybe it's trying to find other people that speaks pidgin, or finding people that are other photographers that happen to speak this but don't necessarily do self-portraiture or do southern landscapes. Or
does that mean that you are interested in finding a group of people who are responding to your work in a way that makes it clear that they get you, because they then are clearly they're going to be part of your tribe?
Yeah, I think it's a way of coding, sending out a signal in some way. I think that's an interesting way to put it. It's like I grew up with not a lot of representation. I think I love Buffy the Vampire so much that it's like, I cite Buffy not just as like a fun pop culture reference or a citation, but it was like something I was going on to find representation was through these surrogacies,
that was a brilliant show. Anyone who doesn't understand that's their loss. One other, I have a million questions, but...
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Can you talk more about this? This is in your artist statement, so I'm sure you've talked about it a lot, so I apologize. But, you say Memphis has become for me not only the place where I was raised, but an active borderland between fantasy and memory, nostalgia and history, nonfiction and mythology. Can you just talk about how that idea actually manifests itself in the reality of making work?
Yeah, I always think like I'm trying to butcher a quote when I say it, but I think it is like a response to Alex Link said, "The South is something to be misremembered." And he was referring to how the depiction of the South is kind of almost always in the eye of the beholder, I guess, that in a way that it is, the idea of the South is always constantly shifting in the minds of others, but the main idea of the South is like stuck in the past. It's it's just the fleetingness of nostalgia, and that's something I grappled with. It's dealing with parallel, I don't want to say alternate histories because I don't want to imply anything, but it was living with parallel histories. In Tennessee, my U.S. history class in high school, we were only allowed to learn things after 1863, I believe, or 1873, and the point was to go past Reconstruction. You know what was before Reconstruction? Slavery. And I was lucky to have a teacher that recognized the really weird state placed on. I think it's just, there's so many easy things to criticize Tennessee right now, and it's just infuriating at this point of having to experience this. That is a very specific way of the South being misconstrued. There are definitely places that are progressive and pockets and oases of communities that are thriving in the South. And I think, 13 years ago, people were not interested in work about me being Asian. And then thus, in effect, people weren't interested in this kind of identity politics that was coming into play, which quickly turned into intersectionality. The point was, no one was talking about Baldwin Lee to me when I was at Yale.
Let me ask you a sort of overarching and a question I could ask a lot of artists, and I'm always interested in this. How an artist feels about work either being misinterpreted, and that's obviously a very complicated word to use here because work is often, good work has a lot of subtext and is open to different interpretation. But, well, let me get to exactly what I'm talking about. You have a photograph of your mother sitting on the floor of a dentist's office. And my understanding is that it's your father's old dental office. Is that correct?
It's my grandfather's, my mom's dad.
Your mom's dad. Okay. Your grandfather's. But we don't know that in the photograph.
Nope.
Is that important? I guess what I'm asking, or what I'm thinking about, is that it seems to me that that's a very key little factoid, that this is your grandfather's, it's not some random dentist's office. Yeah. And
Oh.
But yet we don't know that unless, like me, you did a lot of research and in some, I don't even remember where I read it, but somehow I found that out. And then that added this other layer to the photograph. So what happens, because, a lot of your work, not a lot, but certainly some of your work, like many other artists, is there are things in it that we, the audience, don't know. We don't understand unless we read about it. We don't get certain messages or references. So how do you think about that as the creator, as a maker? What you know versus what may or may not be communicated to your audience?
Yeah, that's an interesting question to pose against that particular photograph. I definitely don't think it's important for folks to have to know that bit of information in order to appreciate the photograph. I try to also impart this when I teach, is the idea that we can only control our intentions, our tools, our materiality, and that once it goes up on the wall, that once it becomes this public interaction, just merely by allowing people to look at it, I want people to connect, or if they don't connect, that's okay as well. That happens. I don't think everybody has to like everything. It's more important for me to control my intentions, and those are usually to have fun, satisfy my curiosity, because Dorothy Parker said, the cure for boredom is curiosity. There is no cure for curiosity. That is enough for me. I've realized a while ago, in I think around 2018, I just left Rutgers to just seriously take on being an artist. And, teachers should be paid more. That's a sidebar there, but I believe teachers should be paid more. But I remember in 2018, and I decided to just do the artist thing and see what it means to put myself out there, I really gave up. Like, I literally had a day where I just I give. I'm just gonna have to have fun. I don't know how I'm gonna be able to make this photograph with little money, but I can still make pictures, so I guess that means something. So I decided after that, I just said fuck it, because it mattered to me that I was just making pictures at all. Like, somehow, even if they were bad, I was just able to do it at all was satisfying enough, because I knew I could do it with resources, and I definitely could make pictures when I was definitely limited in my resources. So I think about that, and that just kept on going to only think about my own intentions. And I like when people look at my work because they have information that I do not have. And I love when people interpret it because they're just providing this bit of information I wouldn't have otherwise. And it's okay to be vulnerable, and that the work doesn't land sometimes, but it does land for other people who might be interested, or it speaks to them in some way because they have experiences and that I've never had.
I think a lot of what you're saying, not all, but a lot of what you're saying is just how important loving the process is, and finding a process that, can keep you going even in difficult times. And, your work is often described as playful. I mean, it's amazing how many times that word is used to describe your work. And I see that as well, of course. I mean, you have a really great sense of humor. And, so it seems like you're having fun. Now, of course, just because the end result seems playful and funny doesn't necessarily mean you're having fun making the work, but it does seem, it right. Seems like that. And of course, that can keep you going. I mean, if you were really struggling and not having fun with the process, then I can't imagine. I think that's probably when people stop their art, right? I mean, unless they're real masochists. So tell me about, because one of the bodies of work that seems sort of outside of the work we've been talking about is Return to Sender, yes, which is a really wonderful body of work where you have strangers kiss you and you are really not returning the kiss. You're sort of like a receptacle that's sort of passively getting this kiss. The photographs are very beautiful, formally really gorgeous, as is all of your work. But what's going on with that body of work? And are we going to see a book of that? And yeah, what's the status of that? Yeah, seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah, I was working on some kind of book layout with some friends from school, and it had to be so far it's kind of like on the back burner, and hopefully one day I'm able to revisit it as an actual book. But the layout is there, the design is there. I just actually re-edit a lot of them because during the course of making the book for Aperture, I learned to color grade better my work, and I was like, oh man, I can't believe, well, people could definitely see my really bad edits on the internet, which is fine. I think that's okay. I could live with that because then they get to see this like better, improved, edited version. And that the Kissing Pictures Return to Sender was the first serious body of work I did with everything I learned during my semester in 2010, and it's a body of work I still return to when I'm stuck somewhere because I know how to do those pictures very well. Since I'm less interested in doing things seriality or kind of plan, I just kind of go on how I'm feeling because there's so much different kinds of things I'm thinking about at any given point. Like I'm thinking about cutouts again, or I'm collaging and working with pillows of myself. I'm not kidding. There are literally pillows of myself floating out in the world, right? Well, two places.
Yeah, we should say to people that you use a lot of sort of, not a lot, but you use certain props in your work. So there's, masks and your face imposed on other things and floating in places. And it's playful, as we said. And also your presentation is, you're not that interested in sort of just a straight up presentation of a print in a frame on the wall, that you play around with different printing materials and printing things so they go around a room in corners, and you've made some beautiful sculptural pieces. And so there's a lot of different ideas and different material.
Yeah, no, I love that.
I love the idea that it's just something that you go back to, and it's sort of like a touchstone for you when you're thinking, you're not sure what you're going to work on next or whatever. I mean, I think that's really smart, actually.
Yeah, I mean, the first issue is that no one in my life has ever told me how to end a project. I think was one of the issues. So I have a really hard time of stopping because I'm always thinking like, oh, what if I reframe it this way? And I like that with Return to Sender is like the Rosetta Stone to a lot of what I'm doing today. It's a reaction to seeing Marina Abramovic and Tina Segal, not just seeing, but participating in performance art for the first time while turning the camera to myself, while also, being in love with Nan Golden's work at the time. So I was like making really clumsy snapshots, but it was, how I was treating the camera, the performance of it, setting up for it. Because honestly, I just, apart from cropping and editing the color grading, I don't really do that much heavy Photoshop or anything at all. Because mostly I don't have time for it, frankly. I'm just like, I need to make another picture. And just now, from the result of being supported by the Next Step Award, I was able to just really play out some ideas and think about how photography can be fun. But what is possible is really like the question I've been asking the last year of how photography can be beyond a print on the wall or a photograph in a book. It's those things, but as much as people like to read different things, depending on who I'm talking to, they read so many different, maybe it's a Diane Arbus situation. I remember her saying there comes a point that what you want people to know about you and what you can't help people knowing about you. I believe that's the quote. And I think that's the same for photography. There's so many different things that photography can look like. And it's the same image, but behind a screen, on paper, and part of the emotion. I love the idea of looking at the history of photography. And looking at gift shops, I remember Eric Booker from Studio Museums mentioned that. I was like, that's amazing, because like I was working with puzzles and using cardboard cutouts and making temporary tattoos of my eyes, because I was really, really heavy in avoiding Photoshop. Because it's just extra work to me. It's just more work, and it's more fun for me to construct and location scout and walk into these situations, not just like a decisive moment street photographer. But yeah, I want all those things to happen to arrive at the pictures that I want to see.
Well, I think you've achieved that, and congratulations on all of really the amount of press for the show is just astronomical, and I'm sure has just been an incredible whirlwind. But I thank you so much for sharing your thoughts today and hanging out, and be fun to meet up in the city sometime. So
yeah, let's get a drink.
Yeah, man, I'm up for it.
Me too.
All right, Tommy. Well, thank you so much, and take care of yourself. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Sasha. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for listening, everybody.
All right, y'all. Bye.
Bye.
PhotoWork with Sasha Wolf is produced by me, Michael Chauvin-Dalton of Real Photo Show. The associate producer is Taylor Selsback, and the executive producer is Sasha Wolf. Our theme music is by J. Walter Hawks. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe and rate us with all the stars available on your listening platform.